Hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and this is My Life as a Landlord. I am so pleased you've joined me for today's show. We decided to do something new here at My Life as a Landlord to kick off 2025. I have with me today a guest who is in British Columbia, and she has an interesting story to tell us. This is our first of what I hope is many landlord case studies. We are going to analyze her experience, learn from her lessons, figure out the words that she said and decision points, and just sort of follow along on what happened in this situation so we can learn from her experience. Welcome to the show, Avalon. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yay! So you've got a rental. What kind of rental is it?
It's a single family dwelling in a town not near us.
Oh, so you're
Um,
remote.
we're remote, about 5 hour drive away from it through a mountain pass in northern BC. And it's tricky. It's a 5 bedroom dwelling. That's not common in the area as well. Most of those bigger houses have been split into multiple units. So renting out something that's bigger is its own task as well.
How long have the
Making
tenants been in that rental?
the tenants in this case were there a total of 2 months and 12 days.
Oh my gosh, that's very specific. How do you know that's so specific?
Well, I know what day they moved in and what day they didn't pay rent and how fast that gets them out when they don't pay rent.
Okay, well, walk us through it. Tell us, like, start at the beginning. What happened?
So it started actually with the tenant beforehand,
Okay.
um, who was there 1 month before she told us that the house was not going to work for her own very specific reasons. And so we made an agreement with her. We said, well, your lease is still a 12 months lease, so we'll let you out of it, but you have to understand you owe us rent for some of these months. You can either help us find a new tenant or we'll do it, but like understand it might not be till November for that to happen. And she said, I'll do it. So she did the showings again because we're remote, having somebody there to do the showings and do the advertisings and fielding those things is helpful. So she did that part. So that already set us off on a weird foot with this tenancy because
Okay.
it's not our normal energy going into it, if that makes sense.
Right. So she
So
placed them. She found them.
she found them. She's
Okay.
pre-screened stuff. She'd met with them. So she kind of already had given us her stamp of, I think these guys could work. Where she'd been like, she'd screened out a lot of ones where she's like, that's not going to work.
Mhm.
I don't get good vibe from them or whatever, and gave us a quick review for each of them. So you already kind of have an opinion on them going into screening them. And you also have this pressure of like, you have this other person still on the hook for it who's not living there. So you want to find somebody quickly, which again adds weird energy to it. And it changed how fast we went through things, I think, and
Right.
how we felt about each one.
Now, who did the
So,
screening? So she did sort of a pre-screening. What else? Tell me about the rest of it.
and then I did the screening of it after, and I was
Okay.
doing well until these ones. There are things that looking back I missed in the screening. As
Okay,
me
like
and
what?
you have, as me and you have talked about, we have not done credit checks. For the listeners that don't know me, I do know Jen quite well, and she helps me with these problems as we go in real life. And so yeah, we weren't doing credit checks because it's a single door that we manage. Previously, we've tried to set up the credit check, and I hit a wall because my name wasn't on the house. So then there was a whole thing with a phone number Steve needed to do. But by the time we got through that, we'd already found tenants almost 6 years ago. So then it got backburnered. And then we're like, well, now how often do you need this thing? Do we need to fill it, go all the way through with it? And then so Steve was like, just leave it alone. It'll leave it alone. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. So that didn't help. So we didn't do credit checks. There were things normally when I screen an employer, and I'm given an employer reference, I try to go to the employer site through Google, not through the number they've given me, because
Mhm.
that could be anybody, and go to the number, find the company, find, and then ask for that person.
Mhm.
I somehow missed that step in this and
Mhm.
used the number they gave me.
Oh, okay.
Right? So there's
Okay.
like probably a fake employer reference is where maybe it's not, it still might not. I have no proof either way.
Right.
Um, but it does cast some doubt on that. And then same with the landlord. I should have tried to find that that was a real person attached to that and
Okay.
find out more about them. Like their previous landlord who they were moving from.
And what did they say? You called them?
She
That's, yeah, go
I
ahead.
talked to her. I talked to her for like an hour, or
Hmm.
45 minutes to an hour. I talked to her pretty substantially, which is a long time to keep up a lie. And she was very enthusiastic about them, but I don't live a life of lies, so it
Right. So tell us what happened. Like you tried to check references as much as you could. What about criminal record checks? Did you end up checking those guys at all?
so in BC it's really easy to do that.
Okay.
That you can look at open court dockets and find them and search through all that.
Sure.
So that's what we've previously used as part of our screening is these open court dockets in BC. It gets tricky when it's out of province ones, though. I
Mhm.
found like Alberta's not very user friendly. In this case, they were from a province out east, not again, not a familiar system I'm as familiar with using. Um, yeah, so it made it tricky, but it's still, we've checked that part, have not found anything in the open court dockets at
Okay.
all. So I don't think that was part of it in this case. I think the credit check really would have helped.
So so you had the previous tenant source these guys. They provided an application that looked good to her.
Yeah,
Let's face it, she doesn't want to keep paying the rent. So she's trying to
no.
paint a rosy picture because she wants these guys to take over the lease. Or did you sign a new lease with them? I don't know.
We signed a new lease with them.
Okay.
There was some confusion between me and my husband on how to handle that as well.
Okay.
He afterwards thought it was a partial lease, that it was just to take over her lease, but he
Hmm.
told me to sign a new lease with them.
That was probably a good idea, but okay.
Yeah. So I and
Um,
so it, but it reset a new term as
right.
well.
Right.
So then when we start having these problems, and the problems, like as we were looking at it, we're like, if we can, if these guys straighten these things out, they could live out their lease because
Right.
it wasn't the worst of tenants that's out there.
Okay. Well, tell us what happened because so you've got this screening in now. You've done all this. You signed a new lease. You've got them in, and then what? What was the first indication that something was going sideways?
So we got calls from the city. A couple things kind of all happened at once. We got calls from the city. So this town that this is in, the water meters, if there is a slow leak in your house, will trigger an alarm at the city and they'll call you and tell
Okay.
you need to check something because you have a leak somewhere. And
Mm,
in this case, we sent, so I myself am a Red Seal carpenter. I also have a friend in this town who is a Red Seal carpenter. And
good.
I sent her in because again, we're away from this unit. And I sent her in to go try to find the leak after not being able to get a plumber till like the new year,
Oh
right?
gosh.
Like the wait was going to be really hard. And so she went in and looked and tried to find leak. There was water in the furnace room on the floor, but there was no water she could find coming from anywhere. So
Okay.
there's water coming in somewhere. Um, we knew one of the toilets was running, but that's not what would trigger the water on the floor, but that is what triggered the city alarm.
Okay.
Right? So unrelated, a couple unrelated things happened. This toilet's leaking, triggers city alarm. Friend goes there. There's definitely water on the floor. Can't find where it's coming from. And while she's there, she noticed that the like 3-inch plumbing stack, also the valve on it was wet.
Hmm.
Unrelated again. Like, so she called her plumber who answered her calls faster than they'll answer other people because
Right.
about networking.
Yep.
And so she calls him and he said, I will be there. He told her kind of what he thought was wrong. I will be there in a couple days. I will replace that valve. So when he was there, he there was again still water on the floor. And he said, but that he looked around and he figured out it was coming from kids in the bathtub upstairs. It was
Okay.
on
The one
coming out
floor
of
up.
the floor up above it.
Okay.
So it was coming out of the tub, sitting on the floor, and going through the holes in the floor where like the toilet flange is, um,
Oh,
and raining into the
the
furnace room.
furnace
So
room.
he replaced the piece and also wrote us an invoice saying that I also found the source of all this water, and it was all the water on the floor in the linoleum bathroom upstairs.
So it wasn't the leaking toilet. It
Wasn't the
was
leaking toilet because it was a running toilet, not leaking. All the water's still in the toilet.
right.
It just
Okay.
runs. So that's what triggered the alarm. So, like, yeah, a few unrelated things, which does start to cast suspicion of like, okay,
Something's
but
up.
something's up. You're like, this was a lot of things in a row and maybe a coincidence, but like also something to watch. So I went up there. I bought new toilets. This is a 3 bathroom house. So I bought 3 new toilets and just replaced them all because they were all older, and was like, let's get rid of this city alarm because they've now called us again to go up
Mm,
there and fix it and
second
be like,
call. Okay.
at least get that, like, we still have to tackle these things. So I went up there again. I'm now in that bathroom and there's water on the floor.
Oh,
And so I talked to them and I showed them, and the water on the floor is something, water in any building is an issue. It is an absolute issue. We live in a
hmm,
fairly dry climate, so moisture is not normally an issue that we battle day to day, but it is when there's water, just water, not moisture, just water.
right.
So I replaced all the toilets, had a chat with them, and there were some things that they had said while I was there that raised flags in my brain and gave
Okay.
me anxiety about the situation. One of
What
them
did they say?
one of them was that they knew the tenant we had previously evicted about 6 years ahead of that, and that he's like, "Oh, I know somebody who used to live here." And then told me the name, and I was like, "Oh no." Like, I don't know if it was a threat or a heads up. Like, it was weird. It was weird to say in a conversation that had nothing to do with it. Like, he brought it up and said it.
You become like the 5 people you know, right? So if he knew them and you evicted them, and
Yeah.
that was 2 tenants ago. That was two
Three.
tenants
This was
before.
one even before that because we had
Oh
one for
gosh.
about 5 years in between there.
But there was an eviction involved with this person that he named. So that's a red flag that they even knew it. Okay. Okay. What
Yeah.
else did they say?
Oh, what was? Oh, they changed the lock. By the time I got there, they changed
Hmm.
the lock without permission. Um, and they had said that they had lost the keys and had to replace the lock. Um, but what again, so this one plays out again 2 weeks later when I have to go up there for more and increasing water damage. Um, that they now had a second lock on the door at this point. So they have been there a total of 6 weeks and they have changed the lock 2 times.
That is a huge red flag in my book. Wow.
That's a huge red flag. And so I had chatted with them about it before and gave them a verbal warning. This one required a written warning. Like,
Yeah.
you were already told not to do this. If you'd looked at your lease, you'd have known not to do this.
Right.
Um, yeah. So one gentle but like firm, no, you can't do that. And then one like in writing, nah, this is no good.
Well, not every lease says that you're not allowed to change the locks. Now, in BC, it says specifically you're not allowed to change the locks without permission from the landlord, and you have to have a key. Now, you're up there, you're driving 5 hours each way. Now you've made 2 trips and the locks are all changed. I mean, how did you get in? They must have met you, or did they drop a key for you somewhere, or what?
They were there. They were
Okay,
there. I followed the warning or the entry procedures, right, of telling them that I'm coming, what day and time.
gave proper notice. Yep.
Email, gave proper notice. So they knew what time I was coming. And I also made sure to communicate via text with them and make sure I'm getting confirmation back because I am driving up there. I need confirmation that this has been received. So I am also in text communication with them
Sure.
outside of that. So they knew what time I was coming to do these things. Um, yeah, it uncomfortable. The second time, I got a key from them and they actually had locked me out at one point, and I was like, key in hand now. This can't be happening. It was like I'd gone to go take a phone call and came back and it was locked. And I was like,
Mm.
nope, nope, now.
So the second time you came up for more water damage, now was the city keep calling or was that leak done?
This was different. This was other damage. This was part of it was landlording, just a
Okay.
landlording problem. So the previous tenants, the one we had there for an extended amount of time,
Mhm.
they're the only ones I think I can credit with having popsicle sticks, straws, bottle cleaners, all down the drain of the sink,
Oh no.
stuck in the P-trap,
Oh
where the
no.
dishwasher drains into, which led to the dishwasher overfilling and flooding underneath the cabinets and leaking into the basement. So I ended up,
Oh no.
so once I sorted that out, I had to dry it all out, rip down a bunch of drywall because now there's drywall from falling from the ceiling. Then I look over across the basement into the bathroom that is below the upstairs bathroom that previously has had this water issue with the tenants, with
Yeah.
the tub. And there's so much water that has been coming through there that now the bathroom ceiling is falling down
In the
from
basement.
into the basement. Yes, in the bathroom. So on two sides of the basement, I've got our dishwasher water, and on the other one is their bathtub water. So I cut two big holes in the drywall and dried everything out, ran dehumidifiers, and just, I was like, I don't have time to be up here. We have a young family,
Mm.
and my husband works full time. So this is like managing the childcare that goes with that is tricky and makes
Right.
it time limited on how long I can be up there at a time.
Right.
So I was like, well, at least I'll get this ripped apart, dry it out, and we'll call a drywaller to come fix this.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
Wow.
yeah.
So you had to give them a warning letter about the lock. You had to give them some kind of warning letter about the water that the kids were splashing from the
Mhm.
bathtub. I mean, and then it sounds like, based on what you had said, their term length or their tenancy length, that they were only there 2 months and 12 days. Very specific. Sounds like they stopped paying. So walk us through the rest of this, of how you did this and made decisions.
So we wrote them a warning letter. For those of you that may not know, Chat GPT or Gemini or any of those AI things will help you write these letters,
Cool idea. I like
which
it.
takes the emotion out of it. And then you can tell them what you want in it. It takes the emotion out of it and writes a very professional sounding thing. But then you can go in and fix it before you send it,
Of course.
right? And make sure it's exactly how you want. But it gives you a very good structure, which I didn't realize that's something you could use it for. My husband was all over this. And so he wrote the letter. The warning letter contained 5 or 6 different items that were an issue because while I was up there, I also learned they'd been smoking in one of the bedrooms in the basement.
Oh no.
A no-go. And there were cigarette butts also outside the front door, which is also an issue.
Yeah, because now it's litter.
No, it's litter. Also, it means improper disposal of cigarettes. And we've already had a fire from people doing that in this
At that
house.
house.
At that house, we've
Oh
had an
no.
issue with a previous tenant smoking outside that's lit part of it on fire.
Oh no.
um,
Okay. So
so
big warning letter.
big warning letter. And in that we said this is a lot of things, as you had instructed us, is like
I
this is a
guided you. Yes,
lot.
I did.
um So we had put like, this is a lot of things, and it seems like living within our lease agreements is not for you. You may want to consider leaving. This offer is good till November 30th. You may want to consider leaving. We will give you your damage deposit back, and we will not pursue you as long as there's no further damage and you accept this before the 30th. On the 29th, they said, we'd like to stay. We can't find somewhere to go. So
Mhm.
rejected that offer. 2 days later, did not pay rent.
On the 1st of
On the
December.
1st, did not pay rent. On the 2nd, we sent them a letter saying, bye-bye. Like, you have 5 days to pay or 10 days to leave.
Which is British Columbia's way. I mean, there's other states and provinces that do it differently, but that's BC's way
Yeah.
of, and sometimes there's a grace period. There's no grace period in BC. So you like day 2, you were like pay in 5 or get out in 10. And it sounds like if that was on the 2nd, they got out in 10, and that's how you know it was 12 days.
Oh, I know it was 12 days.
Okay.
We had so in this, while dealing with all this, we're like realizing this is probably leading towards them not paying. We are now looking for property management companies because it is
Okay.
now the middle of winter. We have as I've said, a young family, and my part is the construction part. And due to the young family part, this is not going to keep working for much longer. So we had started screening property management companies, and in my talking to them, they asked the names of the tenants, and we're like, we know them. They are on our do not rent list. You're gonna have problems.
Which
This
shows that the previous landlord reference lied.
was no good. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It also was, it was hard because they're now coming into it with a hot energy to it.
What do you mean?
They are ready for war with these people. These people have put up a
Oh, the
fight
property
with
manager is. Okay.
property management.
Okay.
So they are like, she was totally willing to help us get through it. And she worked with us and was like, what parts do you want to do? Which was good. But she did want to take it over right away. But they already know her name. She's dealt with them and fought with them before and has had long evictions with them before. So she was like, you're going to have problems and this could be a problem for a while. So she wanted to go in hot with it, like fire, and just go in. She wanted to slap the notice that she was taking it over right on the door. But we knew, because they'd done a drive-by, we knew there was a U-Haul on the 3rd that was there.
Oh, so you had
So
somebody bird dog it. Okay.
yeah, so we had somebody go by and there was a U-Haul. Also, the neighborhood keeps us updated with
So
what's happening.
you know the neighbors, which is a
Yeah.
blessing, and that's what I do on
Yes.
all my properties. Okay, great. Keep going. So
Yeah.
U-Haul, property manager on standby.
Yeah. So knowing that the U-Haul is there, we want to be gentle. And we'd had verification stuff was going from the house to the U-Haul, not the other way around. Right? They're not
Okay.
barricading the doors. They are taking stuff out.
Okay.
um, so with that, we wanted to be gentle and not aggravate the situation
Okay.
because they are showing signs of leaving, very clear signs of leaving.
Okay.
So the property management company that we're signing the paperwork with and getting on board, they want to go slap a notice on because they think if they put the notice on, these guys are going to leave. But we're like, they're leaving. They're leaving. just we'll send the last couple emails to them, but if you can do the move out inspection at the end, that'll be, but we're the ones who have been communicating with them, and then they're showing signs of leaving without a fight. So just slow down. It'll be okay, maybe.
So the pay or quit notice, for lack of, like, they didn't pay December rent, came from you guys. You
Came from
didn't
us.
hire this property manager on, which was, that was a very interesting decision for you guys, and one where the optics is really important because those tenants are used to fighting that property manager. And I
Yeah.
think that was a really smart decision and also I've seen U-Hauls at rentals before, and they're actually offloading.
Yeah.
So the fact that you understand the direction, I know we're saying it laughably, but it's true.
It's
If
very
you've got
true,
a,
and it's so
yeah,
relevant. Like you have to be paying attention to these things. You have to have people watching. So now we've got the neighbors are telling us people aren't there at night. So
oh,
our other thing is that now the U-Haul showed up on the 3rd. They don't have to be out by the 12th. So the other concern is that they abandon it early.
okay,
So what people are watching closely for signs of abandonment, and in the climate we live in, by this time of year, if they abandon it and do something like shut the heat off, or right, that's bad. If they left the water running, that would, in any climate, that's
something
bad. Like
malicious.
something
Yeah.
malicious and abandon it without saying anything. So people are watching for signs of that, and watching for signs of them leaving and letting us know. So they're now not staying there at night. The U-Haul's coming and going. They're taking stuff out the door. So, and it also like we're looking at this property management company and we're trying to get on board with them and figure out what we're going to do. But it also was lining up with them the first, right? So on the Friday, the 29th, the property management normal office hours is Monday to Friday. So when they didn't pay on the first, we're the ones that are serving on the second to keep that ball rolling.
Right.
Right?
You don't
So
want to
that
wait.
you don't want to wait. You want it to just keep moving and they'll pick it up at any point that you hand it to them. Like it's not, yeah, we talked about it a lot. We're like, well, we could emergency get a hold of them now and get them to send it. And in the end, we decided we've already been in communication with them, write a polite but firm email. You did not pay, you must leave or pay. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Well, once you pass the 5th in British Columbia, it's pay in 5 or get out in 10. And so my standard warning letter is here it is, pay in 5, get out in 10. At day 6, they haven't paid, which means you're leaving in 4 days. Right.
Yeah.
And so we're going to watch it and make sure that you're gone on whatever day 10 is. In your case, it was the 12th. So what happened on the 12th?
So we then followed the RTB's process for what to do for the scheduling the
Oh,
move out inspection.
residential
Right?
tenancy branch in British Columbia. Okay, so that's the third party arbitrator. Not every place has that. Some places they go right to court, but okay, so
Oh,
you followed residential tenancy branch. Sorry, I want to make sure everybody's following because not every listener is from BC. Go
yeah,
ahead.
that's totally fair. So we
Sure.
follow it's in BC, it's really laid out. I know you've said that on your podcast before. In BC, things are really well laid out
Super
for
laid
both
out.
tenants and landlords, and it's there to help both parties follow through it.
Sure.
So what we made sure we did carefully was offer an inspection time,
Okay.
let them like offer an alternative if it doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
And they told us, so we'd given them a time and then a time and day, and they said that doesn't work. We all have colds. Can it be the Thursday or Friday, which is the 12th or 13th at this point?
Right.
So we then send there's an RTB 22. Is that
Oh,
it?
I don't know about every single form, but yeah, go ahead.
There's a form that goes with it, whereas this is the final day and time for your
Okay.
move out inspection. And if they don't show, the deposit is forfeit at that point, which it
Mm.
already is based on damage, but they can't fight for it at that point because they didn't go to the move out inspection.
Oh,
If that makes
they didn't show.
They didn't show in the end, no. So we sent this is where we brought in the property management company so that we're not driving up there to do this.
Right.
And they at noon on that day went in and the people never showed. So they did a walkthrough and sent
Without
us the
them.
video and the report back. And they're out. They could change the
Okay.
locks that day.
So what happened with the locks? Was the property management company able to get in or?
I'm not sure how they got in. I haven't asked. My husband's now taken this over due to our changing family situation. I
Sure.
cannot do the construction part anymore, and the financial part of it was always his.
Sure.
So it's changed. So now because I'm stepping back from it, and it's been the weekend.
Yeah.
I'm not totally up to date on how they got in, but I do know they drilled the locks out and took them off
Okay,
later
so
that day.
that's it. They didn't have a key. They basically had to hire a locksmith to drill the locks so that they could open the door and then reset the locks. That's what they did if they drilled.
I
Yeah.
think so. Or it was that they didn't have the key anyway. Like one was an electronic lock, and some of them are
Oh,
weird on how to even get in it. Yeah,
right.
so they maybe just had to drill it to even get it off. I'm not
Right.
totally sure on that one.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Wow. So
but they
where do you
left.
guys go from here? So now you have this house. Is all the drywall repaired? Can it be re-rented right away?
No, there's work to do. There's a mess. There's garbage. It's not as messy as it could have been. It's not as full of garbage as it could have been. The property management company sent us a complete total walkthrough video of it, and looking at it, I was like, oh, this is manageable. This is they
So
beyond
funny.
beyond the drywall damage that I ended up being the one that ripped out. And so
Right.
I know very well what it looks like. There's no Sometimes problem tenants tend to kick a lot of holes in walls
Right.
for whatever reason. I don't understand it, but it's a
Yeah,
really common one that we see, like holes in doors and holes in walls. There wasn't any of that that we could see in the video or that was recorded on the move out inspection.
sure.
There was a couple broken tiles, but it is an aging tile, a lot of aging tile that had cracks in it. So then it's like maybe they just dropped something and they came off, like, but that can be repaired. That's
So how did
not
you
big
leave
deal.
it with their deposit at this point? Because they didn't show on the last day. They didn't take your offer on, hey, just depart. So what's the scoop with the deposit? Have you guys figured that out yet, or are you going to leave that with a manager?
I think we end up keeping it at this point. I haven't totally looked at it, but we have to replace the drywall caused from the water damage from them in the tub needs to be replaced at their cost,
Okay.
right? So at this point, I think that's what that goes towards. Depending on what this ends up costing to get it re-engined, because as I mentioned, they were also smoking in it.
Mm,
So then you have to run the osmosis and you have to get everything clean. And one of their kids had drawn on a door, which is a coat of paint to fix. And like
but it
there
adds
are
up.
things, yeah, it adds up. It also it's a 5-bedroom house, 3 bathroom. The whole thing has to be clean. So there's cleaning crews that have to go in and it'll add up. So what it ended up adding up to, we don't know yet. It's still fairly new. What is it, the 16th today?
Yeah.
um,
But like
yeah.
anywhere, I mean, security deposits, pet damage deposits. I mean, you always have to be careful on using the words damage deposit, but any deposit, um, there's always a certain time frame, regardless of your geographic location. Doesn't matter where in the world you are. There is, if you're going to keep any part of that deposit, you have to communicate back with the tenants. Did they give you a forwarding address?
No. We
No.
haven't
Okay.
heard we haven't the only response we've had since they rejected our offer in November,
Yeah,
the only response we've had from them is that the time and date posted, the initial time and date for the inspection did not work for
didn't
them.
work. Okay.
That's the only response we've had from them since.
Yeah. So what you guys might do from here, with your deposit, because it sounds like there are damages that you're going to have to deduct. Just make sure you've got your itemized invoices, and then if you can email it, because in BC you can email, but not everywhere can you email. Sometimes you have to send snail mail. If they didn't give you a forwarding address, you have to send it back to that house and hope it gets forwarded. And if it doesn't, just keep that sealed envelope and say, see, I tried to send it to you, right? And so,
Yeah.
because that then becomes a small claims case, pretty much anywhere you go, because it's no longer a residency issue. It's now a civil issue when you're talking about deposits. But
Mm.
I know there was a lot of anxiety with this. If you had the situation to do all over again, what would you do different?
Oh, our communication between myself and my partner
Okay.
should have been better. Part of the things I missed were also things he missed because in trying to communicate like I take notes when I make these calls and I try to talk about it with him, but if he's got his day job work stress, it
Mhm.
leads to him not always listening to what I'm saying very well or at all. And I think a little bit of that happened where I'm
Okay.
trying to tell him about it and run it past him. And we make all these decisions very much as a team. Um, that's the way it's always worked for us, so that we're both okaying tenants based off of information and
Sure.
our own searches. And he didn't do that, and I didn't find the things I should have found in the first place to have disqualified them. Um, yeah, and then one of our other things was just understanding our limits as they were changing. We probably should have made this decision. So this house in July was empty for a while. We found a new tenant in August, or moved in August 1st, and she left. And like even in July, we had said we should maybe give this to a property management company sort of thing. But if you find a good tenant and things are going well and smoothly, as they had been for the last 5 years, then it's like, for what? Maybe we don't need to. So then we gave it a shot. And at that point, we maybe should have readjusted what we were doing instead of hodgepodging it at that point. if that makes sense. Just
Yeah,
our limitations changed very quickly in that, and things weren't going smoothly. And then we tried to force another situation that again didn't go smoothly.
right,
So now it's middle of winter and
right,
we we live away from this unit. So like our limitations right now are very physical in the fact that we can't go up there and do these showings. It's very different than making that drive in the summer to do showings and be up there and staying. Like we could tow our trailer up there and stay up there and do showings, and we can't do that right now. So
right.
it
It's the snow where it's December. Yeah.
December, yeah, and it's not it changes. It's the limitations change
You know,
very quickly.
it's been really interesting. I've had rentals in really cool climates as well. And, you know, in certain jurisdictions, you can post notices, but you have to put it on the front door. And typically we tape them on with like Scotch tape.
Mhm.
Well, unfortunately, if you've got a metal door and it's freezing, the tape won't stick. And so we've had to get creative. In one case, we actually had magnets. We put it on with magnets, and then we take a photo to go along with the proof of service, right? If the door is wooden, you could potentially put a tiny little tack in it. I mean, you don't want to wreck your own front door, but you know, if that's your only way of serving these folks, especially when you're 5 hours away, it's crazy to try to think of how are you actually going to prove that you serve them. I really like your idea of Chat GPT. Warning letters seem to be difficult for people because how do you get it out, right?
Yeah,
It's so raw, like it's a
yeah,
personal attack on you and your partner, on how dare these people in our house smoke and, you know, splash water and cause this, and we told them not to, and they're just big fat doing it anyway. And
yeah.
it's super raw. And so I've never even thought about bringing the AI piece into it. And I'm having tons of conversations with guests about AI. I am just shocked at the innovation AI is bringing to real estate and landlording. And you just brought another wrinkle to it with creating warning letters. Av, that's pretty incredible. What is the biggest takeaway for you from this experience?
Oh, right now it's that I need to step away, which is in a small scale takeaway, but it's also the biggest thing in this takeaway that I need to step away for a while. What else? Do your
That's
credit
important.
checks.
That's
That's
important to give
important.
yourself permission, especially as a landlord, based on your personal situations that have nothing to do with the rental. You have
Yeah,
to give yourself permission to step back. And for whatever reason, whatever the reason is, it doesn't matter. But that's really important. And your partner is stepping up, which, I mean, that's an incredible partner. Way to go. I really like that. That's a huge, that's not a little takeaway. That's a big takeaway. Um,
yeah.
this is our first case study that we've done on My Life as a Landlord, just talking through some of the situations and some of the lessons learned, and you know, the first red flags and multiple red flags, and you know, any other advice that you can think of to the listeners out there who want to avoid this situation that you got yourself into. Any advice for them?
Um, I guess check the references, like not just call them, not just like really dig into them as if they were applying for it as best as you can. Like you can't pull a credit check on a reference, but you can really try to, like if it says where they work, Google that company and use that number to ask for them. Like do like try to get around it and go like look at them from all different angles and try to make sure each reference is a real life person that does exactly what it says your application says they do. Um, I try to do that. I missed it this time, and that happens. It
Did
happens.
they give you like a pay stub? Did you have a pay stub or something from the employer
Oh,
in this
that's the other
situation?
thing we've never brought on. Like it's tricky because we things change in between having some of these. So like you can go through it where you have to refine it each time you go through it, but then you have someone like we've been renting this place out for over 10 years, but one person lived there for 3 years and one person lived there for 5 years.
Right.
So our learning curve is long. It's over a long time span. Even with your help, as we talked about, somehow you still have to learn these hard lessons for yourself, despite other people telling you that it's gonna go that way.
Yeah, pain is the cost of the lesson, unfortunately. And I've been doing this for so long and so many things. I can spot fake pay stubs, I can spot fake references. And if there's one red flag, there's likely many other. And in the US, the tenant pays for the credit check. But in Canada, the landlord pays for the credit check. And they can be somewhere between $25 and $40 per check. And I have to have permission from the potential tenant to get a credit check, right? Like this is not something that I just decide to do. And
And you have to
so,
have it all set up to do it.
yeah, but before
Yeah.
I spend that money in Canada, I make sure there's no other red flags, because if there's red flags going on to this, why would I spend another $40 to confirm that their credit score is F and they've got, 70 historical negatives? I mean, right? Or they've got a bankruptcy 3 months ago, something like that, where it's like, oh my gosh. So I really applaud you guys' working together and the very sobering analysis of this whole thing, because it's not fun. And this is your only rental, it sounds like. I'm sorry, I didn't even know that. Is this your only rental?
It's our only one right now. We had two at one point, again,
Oh, okay.
both in the same town away from us.
Okay.
When we moved, it wasn't right to sell them, due to what the market was doing.
Sure.
So we did live up there when we got these. We didn't purposely buy houses away from us.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
it was a situation of having them and then trying to figure out when to offload them, if that
So
makes sense.
it sounds like you're going to try to keep this house and keep it as a rental. Are you going to do that? Or are you going to try to do something, sell it maybe?
It's
What's
still
next?
not ready to sell. It's
Okay.
still where it sits right now is not ready to sell. We talked about it in this situation. I met with a real estate agent while I was up there
Sure.
to see what he said, and it's still not quite where we'd like it to sell, especially if we can make it work with a property management company for a few years.
Sure.
Um, and then from there figure out what to do and what our life looks like and if we want to do this again.
So let's pivot one final bit. I know we're getting to the conclusion of our podcast, but you guys had to make a very serious decision to hire a property manager. How did you decide this property manager was right for you?
Um, Part of it, so I talked to her for quite a while. She was willing to give me information quite freely about these tenants, which could be a scare tactic. There's always that, like, this could be manipulative in a way to be like, oh,
Right.
these are the bad, I better help you with this. But she was also offering to give us support outside of hiring her in getting through
Gotcha.
this. She's like, if you need advice, give me a call. I'd rather answer a couple questions for you than you make mistakes in the eviction process. Her not knowing I have a you, like you, Jen
Right.
Salisbury. um, she also, the way she talked about tenants was very similar to how you talk about them, and like that very respectful. They are tenants, they are people, but also I'm a landlord and I'm a person, but it's not, I don't know how to quite put my finger on it, but it very much reminded me of how you talk about tenants and
Oh,
the respect level. I talked to a couple property management companies as well outside of this one, and they were like, not so that way. They were like, tenants are all bad type thing. And I'm like,
that's not
yeah,
true.
that's not true. Like they're all just gonna leave you high and dry type thing. Like it just
Oh.
I don't get good vibes from it. It also, we had talked about doing this in the summer while we were trying to get this house ready to go again. And we'd messaged one and she never got back to us, like told us she was going to get back to us and never did. And so then when we reached out again this time, the same similar type thing had happened where they're like, okay, well, we'll send you this information and stuff. And then they never did. So if that's how they're going to treat us as potential landlords coming on, it's
That's how they're going to treat you as clients. How you do anything is how you do everything. And if that glimpse, that would have been it. So
and how are they handling tenants as well? If they're handling their landlords that way, how are they handling their tenants? So it's a small company. local to the area. She's been in the area a long time.
The one you
Also,
hired.
the
Yeah.
one we did hire, yeah, that we are onboarding with. Also, her maintenance coordinator, which we came around to all this, and you probably don't know this, is our first tenant. The first tenant we ever had. She is the maintenance coordinator for this.
Small world. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
So
That's
it and
awesome.
that really helped. So once I like we found that out kind of after we kind of had decided to go with these guys, and then I realized that, and it really just helped bring it around because I'm like, we had a fairly decent relationship with her as a landlord tenant, and we
Mhm.
had a lot of respect for what she does.
Sure.
And she's changed fields of what she's doing. But yeah, she's so then when she tells us there's a U-Haul and sends us a picture, we know there's a
But
U-Haul.
But now you have a team. Think about it. From what you just said, not only do you have a helpful property manager who is communicating and willing to assist you, regardless if you hire her or not. Hello,
Yeah,
that's who I want to work with.
yeah,
Local, knowledgeable to the local area, not trying to do this from Vancouver in northern British Columbia, like a lot of folks unfortunately try to do with, maybe a couple people on the ground. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But that maintenance person that you personally know, now you have a team. The dynamics just changed. That's why you hired them. That's
yeah,
amazing. Good for you.
yeah.
You know what? That's a wrinkle I didn't even know. And I'm so happy to hear that because, of course you hired them. Of course you hired them.
Yeah, the signs were there.
Well, hopefully
Um,
they're not going to charge you an arm and a leg, but even if they do, it might be worth it, especially if you're not having to travel 5 hours through a mountain pass that you can't even get past anyway. Trying to source parts in the middle of winter, parking lots are icy, it's minus 30 degrees centigrade, whatever. I mean, the logistics of all of it sounds like it's going to work, but the people side of it is where I always twist to and say, you know what, if you find the right people on your team and you just hit the nail on the head, not only is the manager the right person, now you've got the maintenance person and you have a personal relationship with them.
yeah.
Before we
And
end
to
this,
not make that
go
decision
ahead.
based off of it being her, right?
Yeah,
Like we
of
made that
course.
decision and then found out it was her,
Oh,
that
you made
that's
the
who.
decision first.
Yes. And so I
Oh,
think that's important. And it was like we were already like going through the contract sort of thing. And then we realized that and we're like, oh yes, of course, this is like I think this will be okay.
even better. So you made the
Yeah.
decision without knowing the maintenance person was on board.
Yeah.
Even better. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool.
So
Any final takeaways?
oh, I think so. I don't think so. I think I've said it all. Do you have anything that I've left outstanding?
This is hard. Finding the words to say, and especially when you start to see stuff happening, it's hard. And, when you said you've got a warning letter with like 5 or 6 things, this is hard. And I love that you folded in AI to create that warning letter because that does take the emotion, it takes the sting out of it somewhat. At least it gives you a template to work from, which is great. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on the show today and helping me do my very first case study. I have a feeling we're going to do more.
I hope so. I'm excited to be the first one for it. As painful as it is to admit like the mistakes I made in this, like this could have been avoided if I had done better,
But,
potentially.
but it sounds like you're going to take
Yeah.
those lessons moving forward, even though
Yes.
you've hired a property manager. That's okay. That's
Yeah.
good. Awesome. Thank you so much. Um,